So you remember that weapon last week that we highly advised getting before Season of Dawn ended? Well, there's one more. Actually, there's a lot of other weapons, but this one is really important. And that, of course, is the linear fusion rifle, Line in the Sand. Now, I've been wanting to actually sit down and review the god roll for this weapon pretty much all season long. But it wasn't until here recently, with the overload of fractalines, that I was finally able to track down all of the various rolls that I wanted to test. Essentially answering questions like, how good is Line in the Sand? Does accelerated coils make it better? Does liquid coils make it better? Does accelerated coils plus a charge masterwork make it better? And then there's this perk, Crown Cartridge, which only a handful of us even remember from Destiny 1, that is somehow thrown into the mix here. So ladies and gentlemen, let's break some numbers down today, because this is pretty crazy. So first up, Line in the Sand is a precision frame linear fusion rifle. Fires a long range precision energy bolt. Also, the weapon's recoil pattern is more vertical. Now, I'm not gonna get hung up on PvP. Just know that Line in the Sand, yes, just like most linear fusion rifles, has fantastic target acquisition. I would say Line in the Sand probably has it even better, but the rolls that we're looking at today are specifically gauged at PvE. And considering that all sniper rifles are getting a 20% nerf next season against major enemies or above, linear fusion rifles might actually be the next best thing. So first up, damage values. Yes, we are back at Greg. Now, like we said last week when testing out Trophy Hunter, DPS values and total damage values obviously change depending on the activity you're doing. This is simply a controlled environment that allows us to test all these different random rolls against each other. So one of the first things we wanted to test was what was the crit shot damage of a regular Line in the Sand, and that damage was actually 21,031 damage per crit with a 533 charge time, a mag size of 5, and a reload speed of 31. Now, this actually gives us a total damage of 420,620 damage. And this is, of course, with 20 rounds of linear fusion rifle. I am rocking a chest piece here with 2 linear fusion rifle reserves. Now, the next thing I wanted us to test was accelerated coils. The crit shot damage dropped to 20,393 damage with a charge time of 500 instead of 533. Max size here is still at 5 with a 31 reload speed and a total damage of 407,860. But it has slightly higher damage per second at 16,716. And the reason why that's the case is obviously the reduction there in charge time over the span of 20 rounds being expended results in that small increase in damage per second. Although I will say that's very small. Nothing crazy happening here, but you'll notice as we get further into this, the numbers really start to deviate. Next up, we have liquid coils. This has the opposite effect of accelerated coils. It actually increases our charge time to 566. And again, both accelerated coils and liquid coils are magazine perks. Our crit shot damage jumps up to 21,667. Max size still here at 5. Reload speed of 31. Total damage of 433,340. Now, despite the total damage going up, which is nice, the damage per second went down. And that is, of course, because of the increased length that every single shot takes, resulting in our DPS value being 16,010 damage. So understand, guys, an increase in charge time means also an increase in total damage, but in this case, also results in a decrease there in DPS. So then we decided to go the inverse direction. What about accelerated coils plus a charge masterwork, driving that charge time down even further? This actually results in our crit shot damage being 19,755 with a charge time masterwork of 466. Max size still there at 5, reload speed of 31, and a total damage value of 395,100. But notice that our DPS value here was only 16,647 damage. Now, there's actually a little bit of deviation here. I didn't have the exact roll to test, so it was actually pulling reload values in terms of like clock speed for reload from other rolls that had rapid hit. Regardless though, at some point, despite dropping that charge time, both total damage and damage per second both begin to suffer, which is what we see here. And that's simply because the crit shot damage greatly drops off. I mean, we're talking like a 6% difference there in crit shot damage. Now, I also wanted to try something a little quirky. What about liquid coils combined with the charged masterwork? What damage values are we looking at now? Turns out it's exactly the same as a regular Line in the Sand. Same crit damage value, same charge time at 533, meaning everything's the same from damage per second and total damage. Now, out of everything we just showed you right here, the weapon with the most total damage is still the regular liquid coils Line in the Sand. And again, guys, we're just trying to narrow down the basic perks before talking about things like firing line and boss spec. and everything else that's going to be pumping those damage numbers up. Now, in terms of damage per second, the accelerated Coils line in the sand is still the reigning champ. So that tells me one of two things. Number one, obviously the sweet spot here for line in the sand has to be somewhere around that 500 charge time. And number two, we cannot sacrifice our total and crit shot damage simply for the sake of damage per second, which takes us to actually a magazine perk. So you actually have two magazine perks you can get on line in the sand. One is enhanced battery. It actually gives you a plus 20 mag size. This does not actually increase the actual magazine size. No, it still stays at 5. The only way to really increase the magazine size outside of backup mag is the magazine perk Ionize Battery. Now, Ionize Battery gives us a plus 40 there in magazine size, but it does give us a minus 20 there in reload speed. Now, this actually cranks up our mag size to 6, and when we actually sit down and compare a basic line in the sand with Ionized Battery, again, same crit damage values here at 21,031, same charge time value at 533, total damage also remains unchanged because we're simply just changing the mag size. But notice that our damage per second had a very nice increase, even surpassing that of accelerated Coils, to 16,938 damage. Now, you remember how we said that the sweet spot is at 500 charge time. Now, luckily for us, we have a line in the sand here that came not only with Ionized Battery, but it also came with a charge time masterwork, thus resulting in our charge time being dropped down to 500. Our crit shot damage still being lower than the base crit shot damage of a regular line in the sand at 20,393. But with the increase there in magazine size, our damage per second surpasses that of everything else at 17,480. This is by far our best DPS value on all of these rolls. Now, someone's going to probably ask, what if you went the opposite direction? What if instead you rocked accelerated Coils, dropped the charge time to 500, which is the sweet spot there for line in the sand, but instead throw on a backup mag mod to increase that magazine size to 6? Yes, apples to apples, you will still be doing the same amount of damage at 20,393 damage with the same mag size and the same charge time. The difference being the roll that we just mentioned with Ionized Battery and a charged masterwork still leaves open that mod slot for something like Boss Spec for that 7.8% increase there in damage, giving us a beautiful value of 18,843 damage per second. Sounds pretty juicy, but that's not even the cherry on top, fellas. When we combine Boss Spec with Firing Line, Ionized Battery, and a charged masterwork, this increases our crit shot damage to 27,443 with a total damage value of 548,860, giving us a whopping 23,523 damage per second. Not bad, fellas. Not bad at all. And it appears that we found our god roll. This is where things start to get a little tricky. And it actually boils down to Ionized Battery and something currently bugged with linear fusion rifle reserves. So currently right now, with my line in the sand, whenever I go to pick up heavy ammo, with one fusion rifle reserve perk, I get 18 rounds. Now I get 18 rounds whether I'm using Ionized Battery or whatever mag perk that I want to use. I still get a consistent 18 rounds. It's not until I actually apply 2 linear fusion rifle reserves that something funny happens. If I have a regular line in the sand and I go pick up some heavy to fully max out my reserves, I go all the way up to 20 with 2 linear fusion rifle reserve perks. But if I happen to have Ionized Battery selected on my linear fusion rifle and then proceed to pick up heavy, I only get 19 rounds. So this kind of cuts into our total damage, which then brings up the classic debate, the same debate that we have with Trophy Hunter. Should we go for more total damage or more damage per second? To me, guys, I think it just boils down to one thing, and that's completely dependent on the encounter that you are going against. Obviously, anything that has a very small window there for damage, going with this fast charge time line in the sand with all the things that we just mentioned, Ionized Battery, Boss Spec, that would be the route that I would go. But if you're purely looking for something to have sustained damage over a great length of time, then perhaps that total damage might mean a little more to you. To me, not so much. I mean, we're looking at a DPS difference between the lowest and the highest of 17.7%, whereas on the other spectrum, we're looking at a difference of 11.84% there in total damage. So the deviation is obviously greater there in damage per second, which is why I would lean more towards the roll utilized to do more damage per second. So guys, what it boils down to, the god roll as of now for Line in the Sand is ionized battery, rapid hit for that increase there in reload speed, which by the way, if you don't have rapid hit, pretty much scraps your entire roll, and firing line. Combine that with the boss spec, you're going to be doing some pretty potent damage. Now that's it, right? That's the linear fusion rifle god roll. We're done? Go home? No! Ready to trip your balls off? This is where the perk Clown Cartridge comes into play. You see, upon unlocking rank 92 on the Season of Dawn pass, you obtain an obelisk enhancement called Time Loss Arsenal. It states, permanently unlocks access to time loss weapons that contain an alternate final perk. So I'm gonna name this one the God roll. Okay, you got the God roll, which is what we just went over, which is already hard enough to get. But if you want to get the God roll, ionized battery, rapid hit, and clown cartridge, what you do is before you start the damage phase or whatever engagement, you reload first with whatever ammo you have currently on you. It will overload your magazine. As it specifically states right here, reloading this weapon randomly overfills it from reserves. Now, it doesn't say it gives you a chance to overfill like it used to be back in D1. I think that's how it was back in D1. But no, simply just reloading every single time will randomly overfill it. And it is quite random. Sometimes I have 8 rounds in my magazine. If you apply a backup mag, it gets even crazier. You can hold up to 11 rounds. It gets pretty wild. If you wanted to get the God roll, still stick with what you know. Ionized battery for that increase in magazine size without sacrificing that mod slot. Rapid hit, firing line as one of your traits, and of course a boss spec mod, but then have clown cartridge as a secondary trait that you jump to, reload with to overload the magazine, but before you start the damage phase, you swap the weapon back to firing line. It does not take away any ammo, and it still grants you the same magazine size that clown cartridge just granted you, but you can now take advantage of that extra 25% more damage when you have 2 or more fire team members around you. This is something that I would do like before a raid encounter or a major damage phase if I have the ammo to expend and maybe some rally barricades to top myself back off. That would be the extra mile, the God roll for Line in the Sand. Well, fellas, that is your review. Kind of a long one, I know. We've never been able to extensively review weapons like this, but because of the way loot worked in Season of the Dawn, the large amount of fractaline that we have, as well as the ability to constantly turn in these time loss bounties, finding and testing each one of these rolls was finally made possible. Now, final warning, this is the final week to get this linear fusion rifle. It will go away next season, just like the rest of our Season of Dawn weapons. So if you've not gotten this roll, highly advise you go after it. We'll have a fresh new batch of fractaline coming in tomorrow if you've been investing accordingly. So farming for this roll should be something easily done, unless of course you're going for the God roll. And if you're going for the God roll, I don't know what to say, man. RNG to the power of like what, 6, 7? Good luck though. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.